How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
So welcome, folks, to the Dr. Joe Show. There is a lot going on in the world, but there's also a lot going on in every community, in every home. And tonight's guest really has some personal meaning to me because my parents, and I don't often share personal information, but I will tell you that my parents did not have a very happy marriage, and they wound up getting a divorce. And I was so intrigued at our guest book because on page 114, she said something that my mother had said, but with a very, very different feeling. My mother had always said she was a divorcee, but always wanted to be a widow. But it has a very different meaning than what our guest is saying tonight. Folks, our guest tonight has written a book called The Good Divorce, which challenges the conventional, often adversarial approach to divorce. Combining memoir and practical guidance, the book presents a child-centered and dignity-driven alternative within the $13.1 billion divorce industry. Our guest advocates for viewing divorce as a transformative process rather than a destructive event. This good guide offers frameworks for co-parenting, grief management, boundary setting, and effective communication with schools and families. The author is a divorce consultant, mediator, and co-parenting specialist who has become a leading voice in family-centered divorce reform. She founded The Good Divorce Show, the podcast that talks about the good divorce, and the Good Divorce Academy to teach couples how to divorce differently, with less despair and less destruction. She is known for blending warmth, clarity, and practical strategy to help families navigate change with intention. A sought-after speaker, trusted advisor, and TEDx presenter, our guest brings more than 2 decades of leadership coaching and consulting experience across the nonprofit, corporate, and public sectors. Folks, please welcome author of The Good Divorce, How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family, Karen McNenny. Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
Thank you, Dr. Joe, and hello to all those who have taken the time to join in the conversation.
Yeah, so what's it like hearing that bio of yours? It's pretty impressive.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you. I'm wondering if you are a Rotarian, is my first question. Let's turn the tables.
Well, what happened was way back in when I just finished college, I was working as a writer for CARE. Now, I just want people to know Karen also has her own podcast, so I suddenly feel like we've suddenly turned around. But the reason Rotary International is important to me is because when I was working for CARE, the International Aid and Development Organization, Rotary International had this grant, and I wrote a grant, and they sponsored it to help support this community in Belize, and they were building something called REAP, the Rural Education and Agricultural Program. So Rotary International, has helped so many people with develop their culture, but give them a chance to live. So what was your experience like as a Rotary International?
Oh, it was extraordinary. It was like winning the lottery. In the state of Montana, they select one young adult per year to represent the state and study abroad. And living in London, and I can remember that interview, like, why is this important? Why do you want this scholarship? And before I left, it was very focused on learning about different cultures. What I didn't expect is that by leaving America, I learned so much about my home culture and the perspective making that happens when you leave your own fishbowl.
Yeah. So how was that? How did leaving help you reflect on what you had left?
Well, I realized how much space and privilege we have as U.S. citizens. Our national parks are really our jewel. Being a Montana girl, all of the United Kingdom, if you mush all of those places, it fits inside the borders of Montana. And we only have 1 million people total. There's more
Wow.
cows than people in Montana. I grew appreciation for my home. I was eager to get out and spread my wings. And I really walked away recognizing that if more Americans had the opportunity and privilege, and it was a privilege for me to travel out of the country. It's expensive. And only about, I don't know, 30% of Americans have a passport, an active passport. And so it's really easy for us um, to make decisions based on what we know. And we export our culture. I remember walking into a flat where I was looking to become a flatmate, and they had an American flag on their wall, and they were watching Dallas. And that was what they were absorbing as American culture. And I'm like, no, we're not all rich oil barons and carrying guns and cheating on each other's partners. Like, but I realize what we export becomes the story of who we are, which is important to understand that. And I think if more of us were leaving our country, we would be a different kind of global citizen. But for the most part, we're US citizens because we're very insulated within the comforts of our country.
It's true. And we influence other people's perspectives as a result of that. Just so
Mhm.
you know, I grew up in England.
Oh, how
So
about
I
that?
grew up in Hampstead and Golders Green until I was about 9 or 10 years old. So I'm
Mm.
very familiar with that, and very different culture. As who was it? Was it Tennessee Williams Osborne? Somebody said that the United States and England have everything in common except the language,
Except the language.
right? Something like that. So let's look at this. The good divorce. Somewhat radical idea, I suppose.
hmm And it's interesting, the lovely background that you provided in my bio is really my professional journey up until the pandemic, when I was
Mm.
working as a consultant in the business world, helping that idea of we can do better in our relationships. We spend a lot of time at work. What happens at the desk goes home to the dining room table and vice versa. Well, when the great and mighty pause came upon all of us, there were no conferences to speak at. There were no leadership retreats. No one was at work to teach to. And
Mm.
in that pause, I was able to turn back towards a topic that I had been passionate about for a decade at that time. Since the time of my own divorce, which has now been 15 years ago when we became a two-home family, which is how I've always talked about us and referred to us as a two-home family. Not broken, not in despair, not even a divorced family. A divorce is a thing that happened. That was a legal act that happened to our marriage. But we're a family that has raised kids from kindergarten to college across two homes. And one of my business clients, I was teaching a leadership retreat, and I had never spoken about my divorce, not unlike you today, Joe, sort of pulling back the curtain that so many of us have in some way been touched or impacted. If it's not your own divorce, you're a child of divorce, you married someone divorced, you have a sibling divorced, you got a neighbor, you got a coworker, like you can hardly throw a stone and hit someone who hasn't in some way been impacted and touched, which is why I'm so passionate about the topic in the book. And it's not just for people in divorce or thinking about divorce. We all need to change our perspective and our conversation and the narrative around this act that happens to 40 to 50% of marriages. And it mostly gets pushed aside into the cave of shame and isolation.
Why do you think that is? Why have we been so disdainful of people to the point where, sometimes we can't trust them because they got divorced? How do we know what their motivations are?
It's such a taboo. Um, and I certainly don't have the answer, but I have a couple of theories.
Okay.
And I think some of that probably is rooted in some of the religious beliefs
Mm.
and how we approach marriage and the vows of eternity. And I would lean on the work and the teachings of Esther Perel, who really has identified that we have asked a lot of our partners, and we've asked of it forever. And the vow of as long as we both shall live. Well, when that was established, we were probably living until we were 40 or 50 years old, not 70 or 80. So we've doubled the expectation. And I really started to recognize that maybe is not the accurate vow, as long as we both shall live. What if it were as long as we both shall love?
Nice. Very
And
nice.
And when that starts to shift, we're still caught in an old story. And people ask me, the biggest mistake people make in divorce? And it's even before we call the attorney, because I think the biggest mistake is we stay too long.
Huh.
We stay too long. And within that, so much damage is done. And we also have a belief, kind of, again, this cultural story that you can't make an elegant exit from your marriage. You must have a dumpster fire that justifies why you're leaving. And many of us know our truth long before we speak it. We know things are eroding. We don't want to know that truth. Nobody gets married planning a divorce. But I kind of think every married newlywed should read my book.
Well, I agree. They absolutely should. You know, we need to be so cautious of stigmatizing and perpetuating the stigma around divorce. You know, it's a separation. And as you say, you know, if you're not feeling that love anymore, but perhaps you still feel some form of love, but maybe not that intimacy. And the reason, you know, I bring it up now is because while I don't necessarily love them or have an intimate relationship with them, our sponsors are still people that I never want to divorce from. And so with that in mind, we're going to take a commercial break and listen to the wisdom of our sponsors. And we'll be right back with Karen McNenny, author of The Good Divorce. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show. And we are back with the Dr. Joe Show and our guest, Karen McNenny, author of The Good Divorce. And off air, we were talking about how do you talk about this with kids? You know, towards the end of the book, you have this wonderful appendix about how to talk with different age groups. But, you know, as a divorce coach, which is in essence what you are, who comes to you? How do they find you? And where do you start with this?
Yeah, you know, it's conversations like this, and I really appreciate the platform and the microphone. I think so many people, if they knew there was a different way to divorce, they would choose it. But we have been indoctrinated in our culture that divorce is a weapon. And as soon as you decide to get divorced, you call attorneys and then you go into a battle. And I think that's a terrible idea. Divorce is not a weapon. It is a tool. It's a tool of transformation. And why would we take our not great marriage and our dysfunctional family and a house that's getting more and more hostile and then go spend tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of our life soul sucking and putting trauma and damage on everyone involved, only to make the bad marriage worse through divorce? That terrible business plan. Divorce exists so we can take a not great thing and make it better. And I think if we start from that viewpoint of, oh, we're getting divorced to improve things. And sadly, as we were saying earlier, you know, who is this book for? And this idea of newlyweds, read the book. Because divorce in most marriages starts to become like this unspoken threat that sits on the shelf. And when things get tense, it's like, don't make me say the D word. If the D word gets said, like, it's already a weapon being wielded as a threat and then used against someone who we had a romantic, deep, loving, like, I'm so banana bonkers about this person. We want to get married and our love is so pure. We want to have babies together. And just because the marriage dissolves, right? We're especially if you share children, your marriage is ending, not your relationship ever. You have a forever relationship if you share children. And the pursuit of divorce should be to protect the future of those children, to protect the future of you as co-parents so that you both can delight in raising your children together, not sit on enemy lines across the gymnasium scowling at each other, and your kids after the Christmas concert don't know who to run to. Caught in the middle, that they're still dealing with your BS on their wedding day. And how we begin is how we end. So we need to get to people earlier in the process, early intervention and prevention, so that we set the runway for a good divorce experience. I'm pro-family, I'm pro-marriage, fight for it, go to couples counseling. But when you know it's time, have an elegant exit, not a dumpster fire.
Yeah. Is there a difference then between that sense of shame that you have that your marriage is ending, the blame that you may give towards others because that marriage is ending, versus what responsibility do you have? What's your part?
Mhm.
Do you guys address that, or is that
Well,
too difficult to say?
I think where you're getting at, Joe, and I as we talk about communication, we're going to talk a little bit about how to talk to those kids in your community, is kind of the worst question you can ask anyone coming through divorce or post-divorce is why? Why did you get divorced?
Mm,
It's not a one thing.
right.
Any relationship is this complex tapestry of many threads that have been woven together. You pull on one, it pulls on the others. So don't ask divorced people why. Ask them, how you doing? What can we do for you? What support do you need? Because it's kind of impossible to even answer that question, why? And I think because we also, if we're the ones going through the divorce, feel like we have to be able to answer that question. And that's part of the we stay too long.
Mhm.
And whatever you go looking for, you're going to find. And people start to poke holes. Well, they don't do this and not enough of that. And then addictions start to show up again, and obsessive behaviors and infidelities. And we just start making all these fires everywhere so we can say, the house is on fire. Of course, I have to leave this marriage, and prove to our invisible judge and jury, but also prove to our family and friends and the society that it's so bad. That's why we're divorcing. It's not enough to yeah, I'm going to leave while there's still love.
Right. And the book, it's important, listeners, that you read this, because it's not a book about how and why divorces happen.
Uh-uh.
It's what you do once that decision has been made. And how do you then maintain the family? The kids are going to be freaking out. Um, some of them may actually feel a bit of relief as well, because they
Oh,
don't have to deal with
yes.
the shouting and the antagonism and the fear. And some kids certainly may, you know, be put in a position where they have to take sides, as you were implying.
You're
So
a child of divorce, Joe.
yeah,
You,
I am.
and
I've been
however
there.
many decades later, I bet you can go right back to some of those indelible moments.
Well, I tell you that just when you mention the marriage, I mean, I remember my, you know, luckily they're neither of them around. I miss them both. But in the wedding video, there's going to be a picture of all of us, and my mother is next to my father, and my father deliberately walks around back to the other side of the marriage ceremony line, and got called out on it. But we have it on video, which is great. So, but,
And,
but
and I am heartbroken for your parents because they were not offered anything other than becoming enemies. That's what
absolutely,
was on off. There was one thing on the menu.
that's right.
And I am here to disrupt the divorce industrial complex that has been hijacked by a legal system that is built for controversy, built for conflict, and is led by attorneys. God love them. I don't want to make enemy out of all the family law attorneys. They're doing exactly what they're trained to do, which
Right.
is to represent my one client against whatever the opposing, but really it's the opposing counsel. They
Yeah.
want to win. They're competitive. They're supposed to set out to get the very most for you, and they're financially incentivized by
Mhm.
high conflict and long duration.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, in terms of the legal system, you know, if you think about it, we all want the same thing, which is to feel valued by somebody else. And the legal system, in every case, one person has been devalued by somebody else, one
Yeah.
organization, one country.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, I think some people can exploit that. So how do we move away from that, Karen? What is the good divorce?
Yes. Well, sometimes it's what we don't do. Do
Mm,
not start by calling two opposing attorneys. That should not be your first step. So number one, don't stay too long. We can come to a rational recognition. I compare it sometimes to like the mayonnaise jar in the refrigerator, and you take it out and you open up the lid and there's little green spores there, and you're like, well,
yeah.
most of this jar is good. I'm not going to
Yeah.
throw away the jar. So we wipe out the green spores, put the lid on, stick it back in the fridge, and
Right.
it's already going bad.
Yeah.
And again, there's usually a moment where if we had permission, if we had cultural permission, if we had familial permission, religious permission from our society to say, "Oh, we know where this is headed." So until we're engulfed in flames and anger and resentment, we say if you can't stand side by side at your son's wedding, you stayed too damn long.
Yeah.
And then you handed over the divorce to attorneys who, again, are doing what they've been trained to do. And I really appreciate your commentary about the book. It is not about how to get legally divorced. It's not how to get the most alimony. It's how to be divorced. It's educational, especially for parents. The divorce is one little thread in that tapestry. You've got graduations and grandbabies and funerals and birthdays. You have a whole life still as a family. You can retain your family. And a good divorce doesn't mean easy. It's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's difficult. But there's more and more options now. I didn't know divorce coaching existed. In that earlier segment, I was talking about I had a leadership client come and ask me to guide long before I knew divorce existed. They're like, my wife and I are going through a really hard time. You do mediation at our workplace, Karen. I just feel like you could help us. I'm like, oh, okay. So I did. I took what I knew from my own experience and started to craft a process that uniquely involved both parents on the same side of the table.
Now, tell me more about that.
That when we work best outcome, and I'm a little unique also in the coaching world because I prefer to work with both parents together from the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's not opposing. You're in it together. You're designing your divorce as a team. It's not divorce by default. It's divorce by design.
Does that imply that both people have the same timing? That they're both at the same point of where they want to go with this?
Not necessarily. I mean, once they come to me, they're like, okay, we're getting divorced. Yeah. But there's usually what I call the lever and the left. And that is a very different experience. And one of the things that I help with is, I would say to that person who's been packing the psychological parachute for 2 years, where would we live? I'm talking about it with my therapist. Would I be able to afford? Do I need to ramp up my education now? Am I going to have to, provide for myself? Like all of those things. And meanwhile, your partner might just be like, boop, 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 business as usual. I think it is unusual for someone to not see it coming, but there's usually someone who then finally says, we're calling it, or it implodes and you both have arrived there. And someone wants to place blame. But that person who is maybe the lever who's been packing, I remind them, I said, you were on a train that left the station a long time ago, and your spouse just arrived at the station and didn't even know they were getting on a train. Mm-hmm. So have some grace, have some understanding that they emotionally have some catching up to do. And I just worked with a couple just like this. And dad was finally the one who called it. And mom was like, I don't want this. I didn't want this. I don't have a choice in it now. I'm angry about that. And within 4 to 6 months of us working together, she had shifted. She's like, I think I'm getting excited. Is that okay? Can I be excited about my new life? And I said, yes, that means I'm doing my job well. We have so much guilt that we don't think we should have relief. I call it the grief relief cocktail of divorce. And you usually get a combination of both. And I try to give people permission. You can be relieved. You can honor your wisdom to know that this jar of mayo is going bad. And it's interesting in our culture, we give so much permission to change. Change your hair, change your job, change your major, change the car you drive, change your bad haircut. But don't change your marital status. Yeah. We have doubled down in lockdown. Do not change your marital status. And so some permission, and then people knowing there's coaches and consultants and other individuals who can help guide you through this process. And then attorneys can join you at the end to do the administrative part.
What's interesting, the grief relief, the change, the timing of it, sometimes even the excitement of it, as you say, and all of those things, except necessarily the grief, really apply to taking a commercial break. Yes. I do grieve taking commercial breaks because we have such interesting guests, but I always get excited listening to our sponsors. So with that in mind, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show and Karen McNenny. We'll be right back. And we are back with the Dr. Joe Show. Karen McNenny, the good divorce coach, but the good divorce. And I think the subtitle is so important because that really is the pivot point of the book. How to end your marriage without ending your family.
Mhm.
And how important that is, especially, if you've got kids. Um, we see this so much, the conflict. And as a child psychiatrist, I work with kids who certainly come from divorced homes. And sometimes the weekends are really tough. Sometimes they don't know what it's going to be like when they leave, when they come back, all the pressure and stress. So and I think, there are developmental stages to this. I mean, you're not going to
Yes.
really say to a 6-month-old, guess what, your parents are getting divorced. They have no concept of that. But at some point, the kids begin to realize, wait a second.
Yeah.
My friends down the street, their parents seem a lot happier than mine.
Mhm.
So developmentally, can we just process that a little bit? And then I want to talk about your podcast. But how do we help different age groups from your perspective?
Yes. And it's such a valuable conversation because I think one of the first mistakes we make is that we write a parenting plan when our kids are 6 and 7, and then we double down and we think that that's how it should stay. I interviewed a woman on my podcast, and I like to bring on adult children of divorce, couples who divorce, mostly to tell stories of how they did it well, so we know what it looks like and sounds like. But I had one woman who was kind of a cautionary tale. And she said, yeah, there was a parenting plan when my parents divorced when I was 8 years old. And it meant I saw my dad on Wednesday nights and on the weekends. And it never changed ever. And she wasn't able to build a meaningful relationship with her father, which then echoed in her own relationships with men as an adult and her own marriage. So all of these things matter. And even so, having a parenting plan, which is really a child plan, that grows with the kids. So for
Right.
instance, when we were first in a 2-home situation, our kids were 5 and 6, 7 years old. So they would be moving between homes every 3 or 4 days. Developmentally, it was important that they were attaching to both parents. Time is a little more fluid for a kid. They don't know the difference between a Wednesday and a Sunday. When you're a 6-year-old, having a calendar in the house, we would color code it. The other thing we did is we named our homes. And this is what I encourage clients to do is it's not mom's house and dad's house. It's the blue house and the yellow house. It's the Parkview house and the Riverview house. It's the Gilbert house and the Robert house. And in doing so, the kids, what we're trying to change, and language really matters, is that I'm not a visitor at my mom's house and now I'm a visitor at my dad's house. These homes belong to both your kids.
Yeah.
Their world lives across both these homes.
I wonder how that helps reduce stress, because I certainly have worked with kids who told me that they wake up one morning and sometimes they're not even sure what house they're in
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
so much stress and it's interfering with everything.
Yeah.
And the anger that still persists.
Mhm.
And the way you're saying, I'm a better parent than your dad, or I'm a better parent than your mom. And well,
You think you're hurting the
Yeah.
person you divorced, you're only
never-
hurting your children.
yeah, it's never helps. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that early damage, again, comes at the moment in which we communicate with our kids. So imagine you have a 6-year-old in your home, but you also have a 12-year-old. That's probably not the same conversation or even at the same
No.
time. So I would advise a family, take your 16-year-old, both of you together, because right away then your kiddos see you as your parent team. We're unified in this. We're not enemies. We're here for you. You can go off stage and moan and bicker as much as you want, but on stage with your kids, you bring your best version of yourself for them. For them. And together, we might use language with a 6-year-old we have gotten so grumpy with each other. We don't even want to snuggle up at bedtime anymore and have our own bedtime stories. It's getting really hard for us to be nice. We use like 6-year-old playground language. I'm grumpy. We don't want to snuggle anymore.
So is there always that anger component then to a divorce? Is there that
Well,
irritability or
I think this is such an interesting question. And I have a theory, and I'm curious your thoughts about this, Dr. Joe, is that there is an anger. And I think Krista Tippett, a great journalist, said, anger is what pain looks like when it shows up in public. So under that anger, there's pain and grief and remorse. We really underestimate how much grief comes with divorce. And I highlight that in the book. And we talked about if my spouse had died, I
Yes.
never wanted my spouse to die,
Right.
but my community would have known how to show up. There would have been a meal train. I never would have been alone for a holiday. People would have been checking in. They would not have avoided me in the produce section. They would have come on over and given me a hug. But if you're the divorcee, they think it's contagious. People don't know
Yeah.
how to support us, and they don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, my husband did not die. My marriage died. My family as I knew it died. My identity as a wife and partner died. Probably I maybe had to change jobs. I might have had to move. I might have had to move out of my town or out of my house. I might have lost part of my community. So much loss that
People
comes.
aren't bringing you casseroles for that, right?
That's right. No
Yeah.
casserole for divorce, but we're changing that one conversation at a time right here.
And that's what that book is about, is helping us change the culture of divorce. It's
Yes.
still, I think people still feel so ashamed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, rather than looking at their own responsibility, there's a lot of blame. So how do you manage that in your sessions with folks? Anger, one of my phrases, anger is an emotion designed to change things. We get angry when we want somebody to do something different, start doing something, stop doing something.
It's information. Well, and what I was going to ask you is I think we're angry actually not at each other. That's where it goes. But there's this third invisible entity, which was a bill of sale we were sold that marriage, will be easy, will always be romantic, that it's a fairy tale and it will last forever. And when that isn't happening, now I'm angry at the book, the story book, the magical thinking, the image of what was supposed to be. But that's an invisible thing. And it's much easier to be angry at my spouse.
I agree. And I'm smiling a bit because I enjoy the fact that, every newlywed couple should definitely read this book. But it's a really interesting book for a newlywed couple to read about.
And this is why, this is my theory about that, is every time we get on a plane, before we take off, what do those, flight attendants do for us every time? They say, take out the safety card from the back seat pocket, and we're going to tell you what to do if there's turbulence, if we crash. And nobody sits there thinking, why are they so pessimistic? Why do they think our plane is going to crash?
Right.
Why do they keep hammering into us? And hardly any plane ever crashes.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. But they keep telling us, my book is the safety card in the back seat pocket of your marriage. Just know. We think that if we talk about divorce, it means we want one or we're going to get one. No, we need to look at divorce as something to be educated to. And if you knew at the beginning of your marriage, if there's turbulence, here's some things that we could do to maybe avoid divorce, and at the very least avoid a terrible divorce.
And a terrible plane crash that takes out a lot of innocent people.
That's
your kids,
exactly
your relatives, the whole community. What side am I meant to take? Yeah, I mean, certainly if a divorcing couple can communicate to the community, hey, listen, you don't have to take sides. We're both good with this.
Yep.
We want to preserve our family, our community, our place here. Wow, that is revolutionary, Karen.
I coach couples to write that public service announcement to their community. You go announce your divorce in the same way you announced your wedding. Be a good journalist. Write your own headline. Stay ahead of the press. Because the shadow figures, they're going to come in and try to hijack your divorce. And you're going to just say, we're here for our kids. We're not litigating. You don't have to pick a side. Just be on the side of our kids. That's the side we're on. We're on the same side of the table. We are sitting on the same side. And when we do that, everything looks different. Everything looks different. And we can design and educate, which is why I want the grandparents to read the book, the friends and the siblings to better understand, the managers at work who your employees are going through divorce, and you think that they can function at the same level. They cannot. A lot of us are like screaming ourselves off the bathroom floor for months. For months. And post-divorce, even when the ink is dry, now I have this whole other experience of my home that is so silent. It is deafening. My kids are gone. What do I do with myself? How do I date again? How do I re-identify? How do I not get all resentful when my former spouse starts dating? There's
Yeah.
so much to learn of how to do divorce well. And we just have not looked at the opportunity to educate people. Here's how you can do it better. Here's how you can make those transitions better. Here's how you can write a calendar that grows with your kids. Here's how to talk to your children at any age. Here's how to think about your 18-year-old, because you all have been saying, we'll wait till they graduate. We'll just stay for the kids. And then you think, oh, now we don't have to deal with it.
Right. There's that wonderful, terrible joke about the couple in their 90s who were going to get divorced. And they say, why'd you wait so long? Say, well, we're waiting for our children to die. So, it's like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's this stigma around it, and the idea maybe we can change that. I just want people, the audience, to listen. We're not encouraging you to get divorced.
No.
If your marriage is solid and stable, all that stuff, right. But be
Awesome.
aware that it is different. If when a spouse passes, and it's part of, Karen said in one of the chapters, a lot of people feel compassion for you. When you're in your home with a deceased spouse, you miss them, wonder, they're not there. But with a divorce, you're thinking, what the heck is that person doing? Right? They're not with me. What are they doing? Are they enjoying their lives? How do we help people with that? And the reason I say it is because I do get a lot of joy. And the joy I get is from our sponsors who are willing to support me and not divorce me and not separate from me. And so with that in mind, let's hear what they have to offer all of us. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show and the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny. And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show. Very interesting discussion with Karen McNenny, author of The Good Divorce, How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family. And Karen, off air, we were talking a number of things, but how do people find you? You have a podcast as well. How do they get the book? How do they find Karen McNenny?
If you get online and you just Google The Good Divorce, you're probably going to find me. Or Constance Ahrens, I will just mention, has since deceased, but she was an early pioneer in this work. And 30 years ago, she wrote a book I didn't know called The Good Divorce. It's very research based. But I have taken that work and that spirit and carried it forward. And ironically, I had a production company reach out to see if I wanted to produce a podcast about leadership. And this was in that messy middle of the pandemic when I discovered divorce coaching and really found my call. I still support companies and businesses because it's all the same thing. It's getting along better. Can't we all just get along better?
Right.
But I said, I want to do a podcast about divorce, and I want to call it The Good Divorce, because we just don't even hear those two words together. And I want to have on the show people who've had good divorces. And I thought, will you have any guests? I'm like, they're everywhere, but they don't ever get the microphone. The only thing we hear about are the big blow ups and the gossipy and the celebrity and the tragic. And I'm like, no, I want to provide a microphone because I believe, like you, Dr. Joe, through storytelling, that's when we begin to see new possibility. And when you sit and listen to the Good Divorce Show and there's two parents who get tearful, who are reminiscing or showing appreciation for what each other brings, or a single person on the other side of divorce saying, my ex, my former spouse lives down the road. We go to every parent teacher conference together. We sit side by side at every Christmas concert. We begin to see the modeling and those adult children of divorce. My own daughter, when she turned 18 and went off to college, she came home on her Christmas break and said, Mom, I think I should be on your show. And I said, oh, do you think so? Huh? Like, yeah, I got a few things to say. And I'm so proud of that episode. Because she talked about the experience. And again, we don't often hear from the children. What worked, what didn't work, what was important to you. And so that's the basis of the podcast. And about 50% of my guests are now also experts in the field, professionals, financial analysts, real estate people, attorneys, mental health, child specialists, who I will never have someone on the show that's going to tell you how to get the most out of your ex, how to double down and leave them with nothing. No, I will never perpetuate that message. It's not in the best interest of your kids. It's not in the best interest of society. And I'm really a peacemaker. That's my truest identity. It's what I did in the workplace, and it's what I do for families now, is that we need more peace. And if we can't find peace, with our co-parent and someone we had a love story with, there is very little hope that our humanity, our humanness is going to find peace across much bigger enemy lines. And what we need right now is a lot more peace. So that's what you're going to find on the podcast.
We do. It's great. And the podcast, you can get it on Spotify or any
Apple,
platform, right?
Heart Radio, it's everywhere. And it's on my website, KarenMcNenny.com or thegooddivorcecoach.com. And you can order the book right off my website, or you can go to your favorite bookshop, Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. And what I ask of you as the book comes into your life, that you pass it on. This isn't a book that needs to sit on everyone's shelf for an eternity. It has a season. And whether you're the grandparent that's listening, the friend, someone you know you need to buy it for right now, and then take time to write a review, to speak about what it meant to you, what was unique. And that isn't about my platform as Karen McNenny. It's about family-centered divorce reform. You are helping me amplify a message that is long overdue. We have to change the narrative. We have to provide better education and support families and children of divorce.
Absolutely. And you have an academy that's starting. Tell me about that.
The Good Divorce Academy is still, it's somewhat aspirational. I've been working with clients, one-on-one, meaning usually parents, although I do also support individuals who are like, I would never get my spouse on board to work with you, Karen. But, and we're going to talk about this, what you do is contagious. So even if I get one member of that marriage, I can guide them to navigate and be the contagion towards a good divorce. And what I want to do is continue that in the spirit of the Good Divorce Academy, of providing more online courses and communities and therapeutic groups. And as people start to come to me, I only have so much capacity to work with couples because I have a touch point every single week. I see you individually and I see you together. And we start from day of decision, how to talk to your kids, how to talk to your community, how to begin living under one roof with less conflict, how to separate into two roofs, how to begin to write your parenting plan, all the way to what I call graduation day. I'm going to graduate you from divorce school. And now you're going to go forth and you're going to have a 2-home family that looks vibrant and thriving, and that your kids are not feeling like they've been the victim of some terrible event.
And is this something people can do online with you, or does it have to be in person, or is it hybrid?
I work with folks all over the country,
Right.
and online. Even when I started to have clients in my own community, I was meeting them in an office space, and I very quickly stopped doing it because people going through divorce energetically, it's so hard to park next to each other, walk in and wait in the waiting room, sit next to each other. It's not couples counseling.
Right.
It's project management. I'm going to be your project manager. I'm going to be your risk manager, your referee, your communications director. We have a job to do to get through what is a task, but I'm also going to teach you how to renovate your relationship and revise what your family looks like, but still have the family. And it's not for everyone. Let's be very clear, Joe. People who have coercive behavior, abuse, violence, domestic violence, there are situations where absolutely get the law on your side, get someone to protect you. But there's a lot of dysregular folk like me out there who just need to get unmarried. We just need to get unmarried.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be enemies with the father of my children. And I talk about in the book, I was so afraid of divorce, not my husband. He's a really good, decent guy. We got married really fast. We kind of bought the house before doing the home inspection. And then you find out, oh, there's mold in the walls. Oops, we got a little trouble. We got an infestation in the attic. And like, this house is going to fall down if we don't move out of it first and rebuild. But a lot of people, if they knew that there was a less destructive, less despair, less debt, if that option was available, they would take it.
Yeah.
They would take it.
I think a lot of people would. And I think it's important for people to know that that's not a failure. It's actually a way of surviving, thriving for both you and your spouse and your partner and for your kids.
It's an evolution.
It's an evolution. It's an adaptation. And that, I think is important.
And I just want to touch on one more thing that you referenced, this anger and the blame. We feel like we need to blame someone for the failure. And the reality is, I think in a lot of cases, it's alchemy between two people. And you might have been really compatible when you got married at 21, and at 41, you're like, we just want radically different things. People evolve. Again, most of us used to die by 40. We were done. But we have a much longer, growth curve in ourselves. And again, that shift of paradigm from as long as we both shall live to as long as we both shall love.
Yes.
And we should leave while we're still liking each other. Like, I like you. I like you enough that we can work through this together. But we don't have to blame each other. We can recognize the alchemy has shifted our compatibility. We're now poorly matched.
Yeah.
And maybe we always were. Maybe it's changed over time. And a lot of kids, we know it is more destructive to them psychologically to grow up in a high conflict home than to grow up across two healthy homes.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, Karen, we're going to get to the two questions. So we're talking about some pretty radical change from marriage to divorce, but the IM is saying that, we are influenced and responding to 4 domains. We're doing the best we can, but responding and influenced by the home domain, certainly talking about that. The social domain, we've spoken about that, the way the rest of the world responds to us. The biological domain of our brain and body, the stress we may be experiencing, the anger, the shame, and then the I see. How do I see myself? How do I think other people see me? We all want to be seen as valuable. So because the 4 domains interact, a small change in any domain can have a big effect. That's the first truth of the IM. So Karen, what small change can you recommend to our listeners based on our discussion tonight?
It really is changing the paradigm of how we see divorce. It is not a weapon. It is a tool of transformation to improve the situation, not make it worse. And if you start with that framework, everything after it will look different.
Yeah. So the small change is really shifting that paradigm that divorce can be actually a very healthy adaptation in a situation where it's just not going to work. So let's make a decision together.
Yes.
So with that, the second truth of the IM, I think sometimes is even more powerful, that everybody has one. And we're certainly talking about this. Everybody is interested through their IC domain, what you think about them, which has an effect on their biological domain, because, it feels different when you feel respected or disrespected. And because you are part of someone's home or social domain, the second truth of the IM, you control no one, but you influence everyone. And you get to choose the kind of influence you want to be.
Yeah.
Karen McNenny, coach, executive, author of The Good Divorce. What kind of influence do you want to be?
Baby anecdote. I bought a new car about a decade ago, and my kid said, Mom, are you going to get one of those vanity plates? I said, that's not really my deal. They're mostly like name tags. They're like, yeah, but you travel all over. Like, people are behind you. People see you. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm kind of a driving billboard.
Huh.
And so I did get a vanity plate, and it says, be kind.
Mm.
And then we got a second car, and it says, be the joy. And then our third car, as my kids started to drive, says, be silly. And people come up behind us and take photos of our license plates. They grab us in a parking lot. Just today, my daughter had a note coming out of the gym that someone had wrote and put on her windshield. She's Be the Joy. They said, you lit my day up. I'm so happy someone's out there spreading joy. And so it maybe isn't specific, but the intention is, you are a walking billboard. You are a contagion. We are all contagious. Our behavior is contagious. And I so believe and echo what you're saying, Dr. Joe, that the littlest thing is a big thing. I did a whole TED talk about shopping cart behavior for the same reason. What you do with your shopping cart leaves a message behind you.
Yeah.
So what are you spreading?
Yeah.
What do you want to spread? And for me, it's kindness. It's just little micro actions of kindness as often as possible.
It's such a good influence to be that. Every time, you do something nice for someone, they say thank you. The other person usually says you're welcome, which means you're part of your group. You've extended your group. Every friend was once a stranger.
Yep.
There are billions of potential friends out there. Karen McNenny, author. It's so good. How do people find you, and how do they get the book again?
Yes, go to any of your online book sellers, but more so, you can go right to my website, thegooddivorcecoach.com or karenmcnenny.com. It'll all get you to the same place. There's a web page there. You can read through what the chapters are. There's another interview and a message from me and a couple of links that you can get right to that book. You will also find links to my podcast, The Good Divorce Show, there, and access to me. I have a free consult for anyone who reaches out and wants to learn more about the Good Divorce Academy and support, or just wants a moment of hope in the journey that feels hopeless.
Folks, it is definitely worth a read, no matter what and where you are in your marriage. The Good Divorce, How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family. There's a lot of information, a lot of wisdom. Karen, thank you so much.
Thank
for being
you.
your guest tonight on the Dr. Joe Show. Really appreciate it. Audience, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Marilyn Monroe swallowed the pill. Did she do it for love, or was she tired?